Episode of What the Tech is brought to you by Casper, an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the price, because everyone deserves a great night's sleep. Get $50 off a select mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/Andrew and enter promo code Andrew at checkout.
What the tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarin. Of course, I'm joined by Mr. Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, not bad. I'm a lot clearer this week. If you guys are watching this live or on demand on YouTube or any of the other video services that we're on, I look a lot better. Not physically, because I'm a bloated mess. I mean, I feel like a monster right now, but aesthetically, the camera shot looks a lot better because I'm not using a webcam. Generally, when I'm on the go, if I'm remote or if I'm in my office here, I use a Logitech C922 or a C920 or one of the latest Logitech cameras. And this week, I'm using a Sony A7. Yeah, the A7. I had to double check if it's the A7, A7 II. And the way that I'm connected, I know a lot of other podcasters or even just, streamers would be interested. I'm using the Elgato Cam Link. And I have to tell you, this thing is, my God, it's shockingly really good. It's doing 1080 60 and it's $100 and I'm connecting it to a USB 3 hub into my Mac. What an awesome little device. I know that, Paul, you use a webcam right now, but this might be something you might want to do.
Yeah,
Maybe
I wanted to add
one.
complexity.
Yeah, let's just make life a lot harder. Yeah. But you know what else? So I know that you and Brad, when we were producing it, we would use vMix Call or something like that. And I know there were a lot of issues with Skype connecting the capture cards to Skype. It wouldn't work. It would work. This works flawlessly, instantly. It just works. It's like a Mac, Paul. It just works, right? Isn't that how it's supposed to be?
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be.
We do have a lot to talk about this week. Last week we did a show. I actually enjoyed last week's show. I got a lot of feedback about it. I had a couple of things I wanted to touch on. Obviously, there's an Apple event coming up in the next week, right? What day is it? The
Wednesday.
Next
12th,
Wednesday. Yeah.
maybe?
So, yeah. You want to come to New York? We could do it live.
Oh boy, no, I don't. Well, yeah, I mean, in a way, of course, I do, but no, I've got a quickie trip to Boston Friday through Sunday with my father in a car, and then I have a bunch of work-related meetings on Monday, which is actually kind of unusual, and then Windows Weekly is on Tuesday because the event is on Wednesday. And I don't know. I think I'll do my usual Twitter-based skewering of the stupid stuff that they talk about.
I do think it's a good idea for us to do that in the next couple Apple events. I think that would be fun if we're just sitting at Rattle and we just have a camera pointed at us and we're just like lapelled up. And we just do our live, how many times a lot of people ask, Paul and I have been together for a couple Apple events. I think like three of them probably. And our
we've definitely done
commentary,
some.
While we drink at Rattle and Hum, not on the air. We've done on the air too. I think the off-air stuff is so much better.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Paul gets upset at me and throws a martini in my face and says, "How dare you?" Storms off. Mary Jo Foley's grabbing me, telling me not to chase him again, and you'll learn your lesson. It was a whole thing last time.
Why do you always go after the bad?
Why are you always going after the bad boys, Andrew?
Why do you always take it back?
So you guys might get that. Maybe we'll do that into a Patreon thing. Guys, I do have a lot to talk about before we continue. I want to thank our great sponsor, and that's Casper. Casper mattresses are designed by humans for humans. The original Casper mattress combines multiple supportive memory foams for a quality surface with just the right sink and just the right bounce. All the Casper mattresses are made here in the USA. You could order online, delivered to your door in a box. Let me just say that again. It's delivered to your door in a box. I mean, this thing is maybe up to my hip. It's in there. You open it up, and this thing is a full-fledged mattress. And here's a great thing. You get free shipping and free returns in the U.S. and Canada, risk-free 100-day trial. Considering the fact that we spend 1/3 of our lives sleeping on a mattress, it's very important that you know the mattress that you have and you're committed to your mattress. That's why Casper gives you 100 nights to try it out. And you could save an additional $50 towards a mattress purchase, a select mattress purchase, by going to casper.com/Andrew and entering the promo code Andrew at checkout. I've been sleeping on a Casper mattress for about 3 years now. Paul has a Casper mattress. He has another Casper mattress. And all my friends are now buying. That's not even an exaggeration. The last 3 days, 3 weeks, I've had multiple conversations about Casper to people. And I tell them the same exact thing I tell you guys. Yes, they advertise with us. Yes, they support What the Tech. Yes, I sleep on one, but not because I'm forced to, because I absolutely love this mattress. Casper.com/Andrew. Enter the promo code Andrew at checkout. I want to thank Casper for supporting What the Tech. So, Paul, next week we have an Apple event. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's like Groundhog Day. You know, it's Groundhog's Day. Every single time there's this Apple event, we end up going over it. And it's always, you know, I feel like it's, has it lost the magic? You know, I think now we're so, and I'm saying that, you know, as a joke, but in reality, we know what we're getting. There's no more surprises with these events. You know, as we know, 5.8 inch, a 6.5 inch, a 6.1 inch. They are going to call it the iPhone XS. There's going to be an XS Plus and an XS Max.
10.
Oh, 10. I'm sorry, 10S. 10S. 10. You know what's so funny? I've been so adamant to correct people about that whole X versus 10 thing. And my brain is now stuck to 10 because the X and the S don't look natural to me to call it a 10S.
Yeah, I agree. They should have made it 10. Like Windows 10S.
When do we get the iPhone XXXS? That's what I want. That's the one I'm into.
I mean, they're kind of backing themselves into a weird corner with the name, but yeah.
Well, I think they're dropping the numbers. I think that's what this means. Maybe it's going to be like OS 10.
I don't like it.
I don't understand that. Whatever. Everybody's making up numbers at this point.
If you want to drop the names, just call it iPhone and iPhone Plus.
They should.
Like that.
The new
that
iPhone.
I would kind of understand. The 2017 iPhone or whatever. I think that would be fine.
I think the consumer, you know, a couple of years ago, it was kind of necessary because the consumer wasn't as educated as far as, you know, what iPhone is what, when did we get stuff. But at this point, the iPhone 6, the 7, the 8, they all look the same. So that should be its own. Yeah, so the numbering structure really makes no sense to me at this point. But we know that there's going to be a 5.8 inch, a 6.5 inch, and a 6.1 inch. The 6.5 inch model will be called the iPhone XS Max. So
it's a stupid name.
There going to be
we already have Plus.
Are we going to get a whole line of Max devices now, like an iPad Max?
I think the branding has always been pretty terrible. Remember, the second iPhone was the 3G.
The 3G was the second iPhone. Yeah.
I mean, it's not a racing car, guys. You know, 3GS was the third one.
I'd have to tell you that it was a 3G, right?
I did it.
Yeah, I think so.
Just call it an iPhone 2 now with 3G. Maybe that was the issue too. Many people think 2G. I don't know.
So we're also iOS 12 will be released probably a week after the September
3G.
event. Not iOS 3G, iOS 12. So that's going to be released. What do you make of this? Do you think we're going to get anything that we don't know already at this event?
No, actually, nothing major. I think the question here is there are so many things that are rumored to be coming. What of those things is not happening, I think, is kind of the bigger question, because they don't typically, I don't want to say they've never done this, but they very typically do not announce new Macs and iPads at an iPhone event, right? Usually it's iPhone and iOS, and then maybe some additional things around like watch, things that are basically peripherals. There are so many Macs that are rumored to be announced, new iPad Pros. A new watch, of course, possibly a lower cost version of the speaker. This is a lot of stuff, you know. And historically, Apple has used other events for these other things. They've done Macs separately a lot of times. They've had a separate iPad event here and there. I mean, I think if this show is not 3 hours long and they don't announce everything we already know about, it's actually going to be really disappointing to some people.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are left disappointed considering that we get all the leaks. That we know that it's going to be a 6.5-inch OLED display for the flagship. We know that there's going to be a 6.1-inch display. I mean, these are all things that have been reported for months and months and months. Any Apple site, any tech news site, they've been reporting on these. So I don't think they have the luxury of the surprise anymore. But like you said, most likely they'll probably announce something. What was the news for the new watches? They're going to have a higher resolution, right, for the display?
Yeah, I mean higher, but not high res, right? It's 300 something by 200. It's still pretty low res. I believe at least one version of it will have a bigger screen as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I find this to be a lackluster announcement, if you ask me. I don't know. I mean, obviously, listen, the phones are great, but I want to see the camera. What? This is not a pivotal announcement. I think this is just a step in the right direction. So we don't know what the next version is going to hold. Maybe that's the one that we're kind of, that'll be the major overhaul.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Listen, they put the notch in. That was a major redesign. And now everybody's putting that notch in. Have you been sold on the notch yet? Or have you adjusted to it?
Well, yeah. I mean, the notch is just a transitionary thing, right? I don't know if you saw the renders of the next generation OnePlus phone, but it has what they call a teardrop notch. And so it's just a really small kind of a triangular thing, just enough for I think it's for the camera. And if you think about the Essential phone, it had a slightly bigger, but still small kind of a notch for that purpose. There are going to be phones that have sensors and then eventually cameras built into the glass, fingerprint sensor built into the glass. And then the bezels would just kind of go away. And we're going to look back on this notch era as a curiosity, kind of like we look at like fins on cars back in the 50s, maybe, or it's just something that, it's okay. It's not, I still think having a little bit of a bezel on the top and the bottom is fine. I think that accommodates the speakers for a dual speaker setup. I don't have a problem with it, whatever. But yeah, I think this goes away pretty quick. So it's fine.
Yeah.
The Google one that's coming out is going to look horrible. I'm not looking forward to that.
What, the phone or the Pixel?
Well, the notch, the gigantic notch on the 3XL is going to be horrific.
I'm trying to find the image of this. First
okay. Look for the One Plus 6T. There's like a render that just came out of it. Apparently Oppo, which is their parent company from China, already sells a phone that looks like that. So this is going to be the next design.
Yeah, so it's a tiny little notch right in the middle. Maybe, I mean, listen, I don't know. I talk to people all the time, and nobody's affected by this thing. So maybe people just don't care. They've adapted. This is what it is now.
Well, Apple's easy. Those guys tend to accept everything,
But Android guys are now accepting it too. They're all into it. They're not affected by it. I find it very interesting that there were a lot of complaints over this thing from the Android side saying, "Oh my God, that's so dumb, that's so dumb." And now LG's followed. Samsung has not yet, but I wouldn't put it past them. But a lot of the Android manufacturers are putting it. So
I don't think Samsung's going to, by the way. And I think it's important to remember that Samsung is also the world's biggest maker of smartphones. So they've done this thing that I think is very innovative, which is to go to curved screens and very small bezels. And I don't think anyone would ever look at a Samsung Galaxy S8 or S9 or Note 9 or whatever and think, man, that thing's got really huge bezels. Like it's fine. It's really nice and modern and unique looking. And I think they've certainly copied Apple enough, right? That they're not doing it this time, I think is laudable and notable. And I think what's going to happen is they're going to benefit from this transition, and the sensors will get below the screen, and they're never going to have to worry about it. They'll never have to do a notch. That's my guess.
You're talking about the next generation.
I don't think you're ever going to see a Samsung Notch.
Yeah,
I don't think they
interesting.
need to do it.
I find it interesting. No, I don't think you need to
Yeah.
do it either. So next week, obviously, on Thursday we'll talk about the Apple event in detail and see what's
Mhm.
going on with that, because I maybe listen, maybe there is going to be a big surprise. I don't know. They just redid the MacBook Pro, so
I
it's not going to be that new MacBooks.
right. Well, yeah. I mean, some kind of replacement for the MacBook Air is a big deal, even though we know all about it basically and have been anticipating this for years. Right? There's been on again, off again rumors, but here it comes, the 13-inch MacBook, whatever they're going to call it. I'm personally interested in that computer, and I think a lot of people um, are as well.
So I'm trying to find I found an image of what they were saying we're going to get, but there is the Air going to be replaced with just the MacBook, the 13-inch MacBook? That's your prediction with this?
Yeah, I don't think the MacBook Air brand makes any sense when the MacBook is thinner and lighter than the Air, right? That was the point of that
Yeah,
name. It was
pricing,
thin
right?
and light.
It was pricing though.
No, but the point of the name was the thin and
Yeah.
lightness of it. You know, I mean, it wouldn't make sense to do this, but it would make more sense for them to rename the MacBook, the 12-inch version, the Air, because that is now the thinnest and lightest one, and then call the new
And just call that
13-inch
the
version
MacBook.
the MacBook. But you know what?
Yeah, but that makes too
It's
much
what it's
sense.
going to be is a 13-inch version of the MacBook, so it's fine. Just call it MacBook. That's the right name.
Yeah.
You have MacBook and you have MacBook Pro. That's good. There's no reason for this
Yeah.
third brand.
There's no reason for a lot of things that they're doing. So there was a new
Yeah.
bill that just dropped. Do you have any information about that? I wanted to get that before we
It's
continue
not of
on with the show.
interest. It's
That's
only
nothing.
it's for skip ahead. All it is adding features that are already in the other versions. It's nothing to
Okay.
worry.
Okay. I wanted to talk to you about the Xbox, and they're getting Alexa support.
Yeah.
Have you? What do you think of this? Do you think this is useful?
I don't remember when they did this. It might. I don't believe it was. No, it definitely was not when it launched. But the Xbox One has had Cortana support for some time. I don't remember exactly when they added it, but as it launched, remember that the Xbox One came with Kinect, and you could say Xbox. I don't want to say it out loud in case anyone's listening on Xbox, but you could turn on your Xbox and you could do different things, take screenshots and so forth using your voice. But with the Cortana push, they added Cortana, and Cortana became an optional replacement for that. So instead of saying Xbox, you could say Cortana, which is 2 additional syllables, a little harder to say, but it is Cortana. There's a whole platform there. So there's all kinds of unique capabilities that you get with Cortana as well. Obviously, the way the world has gone is that people aren't using Cortana. So only supporting your own digital assistant is not particularly smart. In my opinion, I mean, I think they should support the popular ones, which are Google Assistant and the Amazon Assistant. But they do have a partnership with Amazon, so I think this explains it. They're integrating Cortana and Alexa together. I don't mean to suggest that the future strategy means we get rid of Cortana and we're going to just push to Alexa. We'll support Alexa on the Microsoft side, but honestly, that's pretty plausible.
But when you say that,
it's pragmatic.
When you say they're getting rid of Cortana, possibly supporting Alexa, would it be Cortana would just be the application and it would use Alexa as the backend?
Actually, I would say it's kind of the reverse of what you just said. So, and the only reason I say that is there's some confusion over what Cortana is, and I think that's probably true even at Microsoft, right? That Microsoft has these backend services that feed into Cortana, and Cortana is it's itself a service of sorts, but we think of it maybe as an application or something that might run on our phone, our Xbox, in a smart speaker, our computer, whatever it might be. And it's there's a little bit of tailoring on each device, right? Obviously, Cortana on the Xbox has Xbox specific functions that it would not be able to do on other device types, right? Because that's the nature of that thing. So, in other words, Cortana is kind of the front end, depending on your view of the world. If Cortana is your assistant, Alexa could become one of its skills. Microsoft, I think, uses a different term, but let's just call them skills. Okay. On the Alexa side of the fence, Cortana is a skill. Cortana only has about 200 something skills. Alexa has 10,000 or whatever the number is. It's some crazy exponentially bigger number. Clearly, from a popularity perspective as well, Alexa is today the number one or number two, depending on who you talk to, but it's one of the big ones. And Cortana does not register in the slightest. So from Microsoft's perspective, maintaining the front end part of it maybe doesn't make a ton of sense, and if they could cede that part of it to Amazon, they could continue to supply it with the back end services that matter to people in the Microsoft community, whether they're business users or consumers doing whatever they're doing. And you would still realize the same benefits and more, because, Alexa is so much more popular and more capable. So I think Microsoft's role here, because there is a lot of computer science stuff that they can do kind of on the server end of the cloud end, is going to be to create these back end services, and maybe not so much the front end stuff.
Yeah, I find that interesting, actually. I don't know. This is going to sound terrible, but in the real world, I don't know a lot of people, if any, that use Cortana.
No one does.
I really
it's literally not used.
But the same goes for Siri on the desktop. I don't know anybody that uses Siri on the desktop. I have it. I don't use it.
Right.
No, I don't know anybody that uses it.
Yeah, I don't. It's interesting to me because people who make these platforms kind of go back and forth. Sometimes you see things on the desktop will influence mobile. A lot of times today, you'll see things on mobile influence the desktop. Microsoft brought its live tile system, which a lot of people really liked, from Windows Phone to the desktop, where it makes no sense at all. No sense. Because the at-a-glance nature of a phone is you pick it up, the display comes on, and it's showing you information on tiles. That's how you interact with it. From there, you can decide to go into individual things if you want to. A lot of times, though, you don't have to, because the live tile is telling you what you need to know. And that was a nice benefit on a phone. On Windows 10, the start menu is closed all the time. I don't have something open on the side providing me with live updates. In fact, that would be very distracting on the desktop. So it's hidden all the time. So it's even more useless. Somewhere in a closed menu somewhere, things are updating in the background, and it's pointless,
It's almost like widgets,
Yeah, it's exactly like widgets, except they're hidden and can't be made to be displayed all the time. It's really stupid. Siri on the desktop on the Mac is a lot like Cortana on Windows 10. It's an idea that makes lots of sense in different scenarios, but it's not a primary way that people are going to interact with a computer, like, ever. It just doesn't make sense. There are things like you can have a device that is a smart speaker, right? And you can have a device that is a smart display. Amazon sells one. Google and Google's partners now sell different ones. On the Windows side, Cortana can work like that, right? So your computer could be kind of sitting here on or half asleep or whatever, and you're walking around the house and you say, "Hey, see, what's the weather?" or "Tell me a joke," or "What time should I leave for work?" or whatever. And depending on what you have in your house, it can be one of the things, right?
Yeah.
But you're using $1,000 computer to do the task of a $70 smart speaker, right? Or a $100 smart display. It's fine. If you already have it, there's no reason not to use it. But as far as this being like a major push, it's like, it just doesn't make any sense. And when you couple it with the fact that nobody actually uses Cortana, it becomes this thing that's just, it's there. It's kind of pointless.
This kind of goes really well into the topic I really want to talk about. And this is something that has affected everybody that uses computers or smartphones or any kind of search. And that's Google. They celebrated 20 years on the 4th. And in the last 20 years, they've really changed the way that we think as a society, right? In 20 years, it really has.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, search engines existed, web crawlers existed, you had all these options, but Google really, and I want to present these questions to you. I know the answers, obviously, but you covered this. You've been covering technology for about 50 years now, right, Paul?
50 years.
50 years.
It feels like it, Andrew.
But you were there when Google got started, and I kind of wanted to get your input as to how you think. How did Google change how we compute, how we absorb information, and why were they the ones? How were they able to stand out compared to, the plethora of search engines that existed? Yahoo was around before Google was, and
Yep.
it just they are not a search engine anymore. I mean, it's Google or
No.
nothing. So why?
Right.
How did the shift happen? Let's start off with that.
Well, Google and Yahoo were in some ways pretty similar in the sense that they're both or were both new companies born in the internet era, that from day one had the web as the platform, right? There's no device or, I mean, obviously today Google is Android and there are devices, but I mean, they were born on the internet, right? They were always going to be this online service. And, Yahoo has a different kind of beginning from Google for sure, but Yahoo used to be like a hand curated list of good links on the internet. And that's the type of thing that made sense when there were like 1,000 sites. It didn't scale very well when there were a million sites. So it became more of a search type thing. Google just kind of outscienced them from what I can tell. And, it's the product of a couple of genius minds and putting, their mind to this new problem and coming up with a solution that makes sense. And honestly, it's, it's kind of a weird way to say it, but the bigger genius of Google is that they figured out a way to monetize this thing, right? Yahoo and Microsoft and other companies who made search engines always struggled to monetize that product. And Google kind of figured it out and I think reached a scale where their operations are so vast. I mean, anyone duplicating that or trying to is just, it's like an impossible task. I mean, you almost have to look past it to the next thing. Like we can't fix this. There was a shift to mobile where I think Google was a little bit vulnerable there for a bit. But that's passed, I believe. And I don't know, they're pretty secure. I mean, I'm sorry. It's an interesting company, and it's weird for people like me from a traditional tech background because they don't make a thing and sell it to you, right?
Well,
They make a thing and
interesting
they sell
was,
crap around it,
the reality is, Yahoo was a, 1998, for example, or let's say 2000. Let's go forward a couple of years. They were essentially a front page, right? Like you said, there were links, there were news items. It was what Yahoo thought was the most important thing for you to understand for that day. But search capabilities were terrible on these other web crawlers at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
It was Google's algorithm. Like you said, it was the geniuses behind it that built that algorithm. Obviously, they had a better algorithm than other people. I mean, I think that's what kind of played a part in it. But right now, why would Google? And this is an honest question, okay? And I'm not making a joke. Why would you use Google over Bing? Forget about all the other fields. I'm saying if you're searching, searching,
right?
Is Google that much of a better search engine than Bing is?
It would be unfair for me to say yes to that because I don't use Bing like everyone else on Earth. So it's, I'm trying to be as honest as possible about this, right? Because there will be people always, everyone has their kind of weird opinions. People kind of, you don't understand, like, Bing is way better search result. What does that mean? Who is searching side by side and comparing search results, right? I think this is just something Google has mastered, and it just keeps getting better. It's gotten so good, it's scary, right? We've all had those weird experiences where we search for something, and then you see like an email or an ad somewhere that has that thing in it, and you're like, "What the heck is this?" Google is look, I haven't talked about this in the context of Google, and this will kind of surprise some people, I think, but I used to always talk about Microsoft in terms of trust. The reason you choose Microsoft for an operating system, an office productivity suite, an online service as we move into these new types of new ways of doing things, is because they've established trust over some kind of a period of time. The reason people use Google is exactly the same. The reason I would never consider using Apple Maps, no matter how good it gets, or Bing, no matter how good it gets, is that I have such long and entirely positive experiences using those things from Google Search or Google Maps, whatever. Um, it's just, you know, the opposite of this is the things that kind of chip away at that trust, right? And I think that people, no, I know that people, because I get this feedback all the time, this makes me crazy. People make these decisions that are actually bad for themselves in a way that is provably true. And they do it for reasons that are just theoretical, right?
Hmm.
So with the Google one is easy to explain. I get people all the time who say, I just don't trust Google. I know that they're taking my personal information, they're selling it, and they're, you know, whatever, they're crunching things together and they're doing their little algorithms, and they're gonna do what with it? What are they gonna do? Sell you an ad? Like but now you're gonna bite off your nose to spite your face, and you're not gonna go use Google Maps like I'm driving to Boston with my dad, like I just said. I'm just gonna go. I know how to get there. I could just drive. But you know what? There's an accident up 2 miles ahead. And if I just gotten off the road like Google would have told me to do and did a little detour, I could have saved myself 37 minutes from this one incident of many that can and will occur on this 5-hour drive. That could be a 7-hour drive. And it's like Windows 10S is another example. We're not talking about Microsoft, but people will talk about, well, Microsoft says it gets better battery life, it gets better reliability, better performance, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it has no proof of any of that. No one has ever proved that that's true. There is not a single study where they've compared the same computer side by side with 10S versus not 10S. But here's what it doesn't have, and this is a provable fact: the ability to run desktop applications, or as I would call them, Windows applications. But you're going to make this weird arbitrary decision to use this thing that's not as good because theoretically,
just because
it has these advantages over on the side. What are you talking about?
Okay, so when it comes to the privacy, right? Listen,
it's bizarre to me.
Listen, for me, to go back to the privacy thing, right? I understand the importance of privacy. I understand the protection of our privacy. We live in an age where everything is connected. Every device is connected. Obviously, I have things that I don't want public.
Like, well, you're also a public person, right? You are.
I'm also, but that's my point. I'm also a public person.
Very different thing.
Same for you too. We have a very different definition of privacy. But I do understand there are people out there that are very cautious about privacy. They feel like I'm not, and I don't want to say that it's a conspiracy theory, right? But they fear that their information and their privacy is being handed to a mega evil company. I understand that, but there is a solution for that. You know what that solution is, Paul?
Bing?
Don't use the service.
Oh, no.
Don't use the service. That's all.
But that's
listen. I know that's a half-ass asshole answer, but I mean, I'm not trying to say it in that sense. But if you have a serious problem with Google collecting your data every time you make a search, every time you get an email, every time you put it in Maps, maybe you should not be using these services. You could get your GPS. You could have a navigation system in your car that is not going to do half of that thing. You could use a different email client that maybe won't do it. You know, there are solutions to your problems.
The solution might be just not signing in, you know. This is so, okay. In the history of personal computing, right? There's been this kind of back and forth between the people that make the product and the people who use the product, right? One of the things that's legitimately valuable for the company that's making the thing is to hear back from people who are having problems or having good experiences to understand what's working and what's not working. So as things have gotten more sophisticated, this is just built into the product now, and people push back against that kind of stuff. They want to be opt-in, they want, whatever. That kind of thing is a luxury that you get when you pay for a product directly. Hopefully, honestly, that's been falling off the wayside, but that's the kind of the trade-off that we make. The notion with Google has always been like, look, you're using this stuff for free, so we're gonna hopefully anonymize your data, and we're using it for telemetry purposes because we're improving the service. Think about something like Google Maps. Like, let's say I was driving to Boston. I'm not signed into the app, or I am signed into the app. I don't know. Does it matter? And there's an accident. Now, I'm not going to communicate to Google that there's an accident, right? But I will be one of many data points of cars that have suddenly slowed down to a stop on a highway where the speed limit is 75 miles an hour. And Google in real time can collect that data. And we'll eventually hear from someone who probably says explicitly, hey, by the way, like through Waze or something, there is an accident and here is where it is. the benefits of that stuff are actually humongous, right? Not to Google as a data collecting entity, although it does benefit from that for sure, but to all those people behind you in the cars who are also using Google, right? You benefit from it like I do, and everyone does. That's the point. There's a virtuous cycle to this kind of thing as well. So yeah, are there privacy implications? Does Google now know that I took this trip and I stopped at these restaurants and these rest areas and did these things or whatever? Yeah, in my case, actually, they do. In some cases, if you're not logging in, maybe they don't. But you're using the app, you're using the service, and you can still contribute in a way that has no net negative for you and has a net benefit for everybody, including you. And I just like this kind of
I'm not as
mentality.
concerned. You know, the other part is the amount of information that is out there in public. It's public record. I think now it's more accessible, and people freak out over that as well. And this is stuff that has always been public record. I mean, right now, I'll give you a great example. I was talking to somebody at a bar and by my house, and one of the homes by me, they just moved out. They just packed up overnight and they left. And we found it very weird that they just, after 2 years of living there, they just one day packed up and left. And somebody goes, maybe they foreclosed. And another person goes, I heard their property taxes were too high. No, the other person goes, hold on, I can search it. It's all public. Looks it up, sees the property, sees who the house is under, the deed, sees what their mortgage is for, when they took it out, how many loans they've taken. Everything is public record.
Yeah,
and they were blown away by it.
Yeah, let me ask you a question.
They were blown away that you could see this. Yes.
Well, on a side note, real quick, years and years ago, I worked in a bank and I knew all the cops in the neighborhood. And one time I pulled one of my buddies aside on the police force and we went out to the vestibule or whatever. And I was like, hey, this is kind of messed up, but would you mind, was it possible for you to look up her license plate number for me? And he goes, yeah, sure. I'm like, cool. And I gave him the number and then he came back with it. And then, so the next time I saw him, he said, just so you know, license plates are public record. Anyone can ask for this information. He's like, this is not, I'm not doing you a favor. Like, this is just, you're who you are, where you live. That's attached to the, that's public info. Anyway.
But this kind of goes back to what we were saying, how, Google changed this. They made the way that we consume information and we look up. Yeah.
Let's take it off Google. Let's just take it off Google for a second. And let me ask you a question. So my wife and I watch a lot of these like true crime type stories, right? So Forensic Files, is this thing that's been on TV forever or whatever they're called. It doesn't matter. And in one of these shows we watched, it was a situation where they were positive that this guy had committed the crime. They had all this evidence, kind of circumstantial, pointing to the fact that this was the guy. And what they wanted to do was get his DNA so they could prove that it was the guy. So they went to the guy's house and they said, hey, we were hoping you would give us like a swab or whatever and give us a DNA. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Now, the act of not doing that is suspicious, of course, because if you were innocent of the crime, A, you wouldn't be surprised when the cop showed up on your doorstep 2 years later. And B, you would, of course you would give the, if you have nothing to hide, what are you worried about kind of scenario. So I paused it and I looked at my wife and I was like, how on earth do we live in a world where they cannot compel him to give his DNA? And my wife was like shocked by this question. She's like, what are you talking about? That's like a major privacy violation. I'm like, privacy violation? They have a list of 117 reasons why they think this guy did the crime. This isn't like an arbitrary request. Like, it's like there's a murder in a small town and we're going to ask all the men, or whoever, all the people in the town to, give their DNA, and 99 out of 100 do it. So immediately the other 1% are considered suspicious. They're probably just privacy nuts that never use Google. Like, what is the concern with that kind of thing? Are you serious? Like, we think you did the murder. You don't, you didn't do it, I guess, maybe. Well, of course you're going to give that information. Is that really a privacy concern?
Sometimes people don't want,
what's the privacy concern?
Listen, you see, I absolutely love Live PD. Have you watched the show yet?
No.
It's live cops.
Okay.
So it's brilliant. And you see, obviously, mostly it's all DUIs. Everybody's driving drunk on the show. But occasionally you'll get somebody and they got like a little pot in their car, whatever it is, and they'll say, "Could you please step out of the car?" And he goes, "I'm not getting out of the car." And the cop goes,
Okay.
I'm not asking. I'm telling you, you need to step out of the car. It smells like pot. You don't have a valid driver's license."
This is what do you call that? What do you call that?
So
Probable cause.
probable cause. Yeah, absolutely. It smelled.
How is
pot.
DNA
I mean,
extraction not under probable cause?
this was the best. This was the best episode. So this guy's in a pickup truck and he's driving, and he goes, I don't need a license. I'm a sovereign of this world. I don't belong." And he's doing the whole "are you detaining me" bullshit, you know. So this cop is now, and listen, God bless him. He was so calm, and he's like, "Dude, if you got a little pot on you, got a little pot on you. It's nothing. Now you're resisting arrest." And he starts fighting with the cop to get out of the car. He has like a slew of charges against him. All he had to do was get out of the car and be like, "Hey, listen, dude, I got a little pot in my car." Fine, you get arrested for that, and you go home.
There's a legal concept that you can not incriminate yourself, I guess, right? This notion that you're allowed to not make a statement that would incriminate yourself. I suppose the DNA thing could fall under that, or this imbecile on the show you're talking about, or whatever. But I just don't understand it. I don't know. Maybe this is why things
Listen,
like Google.
I think sometimes
people like
sometimes people just want to give a hard time. And I know that was a bad example that I gave. That was just like a guy.
No, actually, that was a great example. That
was a great example. But there are other examples. Like a couple of weeks ago, you and I were talking about the DNA test that you could take. You know, I spoke about how I took the test, and my mother took the test, and we came back Italian from Sardinia. We had no idea. The fact that my great grandmother's name was Josephine and her husband's name was Antonio, and the Roman Catholic should have said something, right? But we just thought it was a weird coincidence that they're not Italian. But we did the DNA test, and I got, I mean, in all seriousness, probably 4 emails from people saying, "You just gave up your DNA. You're in a database now." It's all, and I go, "What am I doing? Why? And what difference does it make? I'm not committing crimes." Listen, first of all, they've had my information. I'm going to be a cop.
A hedge against future crimes.
Yeah, like they got my fingerprints already.
I want to murder someone later. Like, what are you talking about?
But these are real concerns of people. People have these concerns, and I understand that they do. But the vocalness of these concerns,
I really don't. You're too understanding.
Listen, man, I can get it. Sometimes, listen, you don't want to do, but you don't have to take the test. Guess what? You don't need to take an ancestry test. It's not for you. Why give it 1 stars on Amazon and write a review saying they're just stealing your information?
23andMe is owned by one of the guys from Google, and obviously they're sharing that information with Google Maps, so people will know who's driving in what car.
That's it. That's exactly what it is. I know we veered off this Google topic, but how do you think? What do you think the layout would be if Google didn't come around in this sense? Would we have multiple players in the game of search, or would we have been, it would have broken down to one mega search engine like what we have with Google? Yeah. Because here's a great example, and I'll bring this up. So the company that I work for, we spend a lot of money on Google ads. I mean, a tremendous monthly amount. We have never once considered going to Bing, putting Bing ads. Not once.
So you mean, I'm sorry, you're saying when money's involved, you're making this correct decision?
The correct decision.
It's like when you see a food thing, you're like, don't eat this if you're pregnant. Maybe no one should eat this. Maybe there's a reason. You ever think about that? I don't know.
What do you think the layout would be like?
So, okay. So
Paul, give it to me.
Right, actually, to predict it, I'm going to predict the past. So, look, I come from the kind of Microsoft background. There is a lost decade that Microsoft experienced due to antitrust troubles in Europe and the United States, during which Apple had its resurgence and Google came to be. Right now, please don't misunderstand me. I don't mean to suggest that either of those companies wouldn't have seen some kind of success otherwise. But I do think that one of the factors in their rise, and we might consider them some kind of a computing or personal computing duopoly today of sorts, was because of the Microsoft thing. That Microsoft got distracted. I think Microsoft might have declined anyway. It might have happened more slowly. I think a world in which the monoculture of Microsoft continued would have been an unhealthy world, frankly.
Mm.
And there were already signs earlier on that, maybe this wasn't going to continue regardless. But I think my only answer to that, and maybe it's just my Microsoft centricity showing through a little bit, maybe other people would disagree with this, but I think personal computing would have continued for some time to be dominated by Microsoft. I think smartphones would have been way more terrible and more slow moving to where we are today. I think online services and web apps and so forth would have likewise been more terrible and more slow moving toward where, I think they eventually naturally end up. But it's hard to say beyond that. I mean, I think Google and Apple, right? I think side by side, not happening to the degree they did would have benefited Microsoft. But there are all the unknowns. There are lots of small companies that might have come up in their place, perhaps. I mean, Microsoft was famous for getting rid of small companies. Microsoft, Yahoo could have bought Google early on. I don't know. If Microsoft hadn't had its antitrust troubles, they wouldn't have saved Apple, and Apple might have disappeared. And all that wonderful stuff that happened in the wake of that, from the iPod to the iPhone to the iPad to the Apple Watch, whatever, would never have happened.
Listen, here's a great thing. Years ago, Apple was considering getting into the game, right?
Into what game?
They were into search. Even now, recently, they still have a web crawler that's searching every website. They have an active web crawler.
Yeah, I mean, what you're really describing, is the Apple playbook, right? So Apple would prefer never to have to partner with anybody, right? And they do it out of necessity, and then they often will replace those partners with some homegrown kind of thing. So they are a very aggressive company in that fashion. They have been building tons of data centers, right? And it's not just to store your stupid iCloud photos or whatever. They're investing in Siri and artificial intelligence, and they want to get into this. I think they will scale to the point where they can kind of serve their market, probably to some degree. Does that mean that they're going to not have, Google search, at least as an option on iPhones or whatever? No, probably not. I really don't ever see this being their expertise per se. I think
But they have it in their pocket.
Well, Apple likes services that they can monetize, that they can further mooch off of their existing customer base. Things like Apple Music, iTunes Match, or whatever. This coming TV service, rather, makes sense to them because it's kind of this guaranteed revenue stream. It's like an investment, really. I mean, pure internet search is it's done. I mean, I don't care how big Apple is. They can't even buy their way into this market. There aren't all of these companies out there. I think about just something like Maps, which is a smallish subset of the whole search thing, right? Apple could have bought the remains of Nokia here, and I don't think they even tried.
No.
So they're kind of going it alone on that, and by all accounts, that service has improved for sure. And they must have partners. I don't know if it's who's out there, Navtech, or they must have partners. I have no idea, but that's, I mean, Maps is incredible. Maps as a thing is an incredible service. And if you follow Google Maps in particular, you see how it expands and all the additional services they add on top of it. It's crazy science fiction, awesome stuff. Google Maps, Apple Maps could get to the point where it's kind of competent, so I suppose you're not biting your nose off too badly if you use it on an iPhone or something, but that's,
it's not as bad as it was,
it's ever gonna
get.
Well,
I'll give an example.
okay.
I used CarPlay and I connected my phone, to my car, and I was just playing around with it. Obviously, I would prefer Google Maps, obviously, because it's a far
in the next
better
version you'll have it. That's coming in iOS 12.
Yeah, in iOS 12 I'll have it, but I also have an Android phone, and I put it in. I've used both, but Apple Maps is not terrible. It's not bad. It's not as good.
That's the point. Well, it's like when you compare anything that way. Like Microsoft Edge is not terrible. Yeah, you're right. I'm still not going to use it because Edge, Chrome is awesome. Apple Maps, I'm sure it's fine. I don't care. Yeah. Google Maps is better.
Actually, Right now, I'm using Firefox for the first time in a long time because I
Yeah.
can't get my video to work properly in Chrome. It's acting weird.
Interesting.
I don't know why.
Okay.
It was working and it stopped. So I've been using Firefox for this because it has a far better UI for turning on the video and stuff when I'm doing this because we're using WebRTC. But it's I think it comes down to preference. It comes down to what's important to you. But at the
Okay,
at the end
but
of the day, all this is,
it does. By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to
yeah.
go back to what I said earlier because yes, it does. But unfortunately, in many people's cases, their preferences are biased by really bad opinions that ultimately harm them more than they help them, right? This is the theoretical versus the real world thing I mentioned earlier. Like, yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying people don't make decisions for yourself. I'm saying make good decisions for yourself. I This goes back to that psychology thing and how weird people are. Like, I just don't understand. It's like a court case. You two people are confronted with the same evidence or whatever. What do you think happened? One guy's like, here's what happened. It's all supported. And the other guy's like, yeah, I don't believe it. I don't trust that guy.
Listen, you could use MapQuest if you wanted.
Sure. Print it out.
No, they actually have a map now. You could use it. They have like their own thing now.
You can print it out. If you don't trust computers, you print it out.
You can print it out.
There's nothing better to do when you're driving than read a map on a piece of paper. And really just help yourself. So Darwin will solve this for us.
I think this is all very interesting, and this all kind of comes back to Google, right? This is all because search.
Look,
they made a shit ton of money on it, and they're still making a killing. Everybody, 10 years ago, I remember the argument that Google needs to strategize what they're going to do after search because that's going to dry up one day. You know what? They're making money hand over fist.
Well,
with search
but people misunderstood that search was their product. Their product is advertising, and they found a way to monetize that and in ways that are astronomical. It's not just search. Obviously, search plays a big part of it, but Google is amazing and Apple is amazing for similar reasons. Like the accomplishments that these companies have made are astonishing. I mean, Amazon is kind of getting there. Amazon is a little bit like Google in that they kind of make money doing this other stuff, and for some reason, they're really pushing in this other area. Some of their tech products and services are pretty impressive. And these companies are each kind of unique and frankly kind of strange, in their own ways as well.
Very. They're all very. I know you have a meeting at 2, right?
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's not okay, right, Andrew.
I thought this was an interesting discussion because everything connects back to this. And looking back, another 20 years goes by, we're going to be saying, this might have been one of the most pivotal moments in the way that we consume information, the way that we educate. We self-educate now, which a lot of this stuff was not a reality. It would not have been possible, positive and negative. Like last night, I watched a whole thing about how Atlantis could have possibly been it's possibly in Africa. And the Sierra, and I mean, this is a stupid. I know Atlantis wasn't real. I know someone's going to tell me it is, but I was very fascinated by this theory, so I watched it. Or you could actually go and teach yourself anything you want. I mean, that's the amazing thing, and this is something that wasn't accessible 20-something years ago. Even 10 years ago, a lot of this information wasn't as accessible. I grew up in a generation where we had Encarta. That was our encyclopedia. That was our Wikipedia. Yeah. I copied and pasted all my essays on Encarta.
I grew up in an era where my parents bought paper encyclopedias, and they sat there rotting away. We didn't even have that. It was some B-rated thing, but look, there's downsides too. I mean, unfortunately, and it's not Google's fault directly, but the way we consume information has become so soundbite-ish. I feel like we've all lost our attention spans. Reading long-form news stories or investigative reports is, I think, very difficult for people. It's just too much. They're used to these stupid little web slideshows where it's like, here's the top places to retire in Ohio or whatever the stupid thing is, or here's what celebrities from the 80s look like today. This like nonsense that we spent. We're just it's like we're harming our brains.
Hey, I'm Julie from BuzzFeed. These are the top 10 places to get an Eggs Benedict in New York City.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like that's every single article. Listen,
you're never going to believe what insert name of celebrity looks like today.
You'll never believe who said what.
Yeah. No,
I
it's
mean,
just. I mean, but for all
it's
but
like
for all that crap.
blind items. Everybody's writing like a blind item headline. That's every. And by the way, this isn't just gossip sites. We're talking tech journalists. We're talking
Oh
political
yeah.
journalists. We're talking to
For
everybody.
sure.
Everything
Yeah.
is a headline and it's a buzz title and
Yep.
it's clickbait just to get you interested. And there's no meat, just a title. You
Yeah.
see it. Everybody's writing like it's
I
the New
can't
York
wait to get out
Post,
of this game.
essentially.
I'm so tired of this.
I can't wait to
I
leave this
hate how this
planet.
world has evolved in some ways.
Listen, the day will come and we'll all leave this planet together, holding hands. We go to Mars. Listen, we could go to Atlantis. I watched the whole video. It's in Africa. They're finding it, Paul.
Was it
It's
in
going to
Africa?
happen.
Is it off the coast of Africa or literally in
No,
Africa?
it's literally in Africa, according to this documentary. Atlantis is in Africa.
What part? Where in Africa?
In a desert.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what part it was. I watched it this morning. I was half
Like in the Sahara somewhere, like
Sahara somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's in the Sahara, and the way that they figured it out, there's like this weird ring, and the most reasonable explanation would be that something fell there, a meteor, something, a comet,
Yep.
giant piece of rock. But their theory here is that they're going based on what Plato wrote about Atlantis, and they have figured out that this is the location. I'm very excited about this. I hope this is true. It will most likely not be true. I also hope that the Bigfoot is real, the Yeti is real, and aliens. I keep telling you, Paul, they're coming to get us. It's happening. All right, that's it for this week. Guys, go to our website, gfknetwork.com. Subscribe to us. We're everywhere podcasts are available. Obviously, go to Thurrott.com. My best friend, Paul Thurrott's beautiful website. It's a beautiful website, Paul. Anything new coming up over there? Are you up to anything or no? Just same old, same old.
No, the next big thing is Ignite. We'll be in Florida the last week of September.
Oh, yeah.
And then Mary Jo and I are actually going to Dublin to speak at a tech event there. So we'll be there early October, but these things are still weeks away.
Very, very cool. All right, guys, you can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Zan. You can follow Paul at Thurrott. And that's it for this week. See you later.